Hello, YouTube. Your host, Zachary Young, aka Against the State. I just wanted to show off my Javier Milei t shirt that I got custom made in China. Ridiculously cheap, actually. It cost like $10 or something. Um, I'm in the Philippines at the moment, and so I was able to get it like shipped over here really cheap. Just through like this. It's like the Filipino Amazon. It's called Lasada, and actually, this one was off of Shopee, which is another online marketplace. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, just wanted to show off my shirt, Javier Milei. The enemy is socialism. The enemy is statism. The enemy is collectivism. Today I've got another reaction video. Let me just adjust things. Yeah, so today's video we're going to be watching is the failure of neoliberalism and how to solve it. I haven't seen this yet. But before we go into it, I'm just going to share a little bit about my life. I don't know why. I feel like talking about it, I guess. So lately I've been having a little problem with respiration. I had like pneumonia, and I got treated for that, and now it's sort of coming back. So it's not very serious, I don't think, but I've been taking like cough medicine, and then this reminded me of how when I was a teenager, uh, way back in rural Ontario, like a bunch of us would drink cough medicine on the weekend because it's got like a powerful psychoactive agent in it that is specifically dextromethorphan, and I haven't done any drugs in several years now. Not even marijuana because I've been traveling overseas, and it's well, I guess a couple of years since I smoked marijuana because I went back to Canada for a bit when it was legal. But anyway, um, but yeah, when I was a teenager, we would have these parties, and my friends got me into. We would chug like we would shoplift a bottle of cough syrup, and then chug. You had to chug like half of it or something, and it is a really intense high, actually, like an extremely overwhelming experience. But I'm just using this to treat my cough. I just have a little sip. I don't bother to measure it out, but but yeah. So I've been treating my cough. Well, because what happens is um, like mucus builds up in my lungs, right? And so I've been coughing a lot, but I've been coughing so much that it causes like bruising. So the cough syrup suppresses the cough, but I'm not even sure if it's like a good idea to do that because you want to cough to get the mucus out. And then I've got this, and so the problem comes when I try to go to sleep because if you lie down on your back, then it like accumulates in your lungs and you can't breathe, which obviously not very good. But then I've got this other drug which like thins out your mucus. They gave it to me when I got treated for the pneumonia. They gave me like antibiotics, this mucus thinner, and then this like a cough pill. So I had some left over. Well, they also gave me this inhaler, which is kind of cool. It's steroids, I guess, but it like it helps your lungs repair itself. So anyway, I don't know. I'll see. I think things are clearing up, but I might go in and get the doctors to look at it again. I had a great experience actually at this Filipino hospital. So the first time I went there, well, the time I went there, I've only went there once. Um, it was like it's like 10 p.m. and I was getting ready to go to bed, and I realized like it was really bad. You know, if I lay down, like I wouldn't be able to sleep. I was really concerned about, well, you obviously need to sleep. So I said to my fiance, "All right, let's go. You know, we're going to the hospital," and we went, and so right away I get admitted. It was like completely empty. It's weird. You ever go to a Canadian ER room? It's like half the town's there, completely empty, nobody there. And this is a dual public-private situation. I don't know the details on that, but I said private, get admitted right away. There's a nurse there. Who's not doing anything. There's no customers, and so they right away they check my blood pressure, I guess, and ask me the diagnostic questions. What's going on? I get put into a room, and and then almost right away again they wheel out a portable X-ray machine, and they take some X-rays. They they did a bunch of tests. They drew blood, and they did an echocard. I don't know. They did something. They did a couple other tests. I want to say echocardiogram. I don't know if that's actually what was going on or what that is even. But so that was done, and then a few hours later, I see the doctor finally. That took a while to see the doctor. But I mean, they had all the tests done, and it wasn't even that long. Plus, it was like night, so who knows? I guess he was on call at home or something, probably because there's no customers there, no patients, right? So he comes in, and very competent guy. Seemed very competent. He said, "This is this." You know, my situation was pretty obvious, I guess. It was like a bad cold or pneumonia or whatever. Like, yeah, really, it seemed like a really bad cold or something. COVID, I don't know. Uh, and so he said, you've got this respiratory infection. You need the antibiotics, and this and this. And they wanted to admit me for a few days, but I saw no point in that. Um, I'd rather be at home, be more comfortable, have my computer and whatever, so I can, focus on that, uh, and not, my illness. And it's kind of boring in a hospital room after a while, especially if it's a relatively minor situation. So they discharged me against medical advice. I filled a form out, and it was fine after a few days. And then I don't know if this is a recurring of the same thing or a different respiratory. Probably a recurring of the same thing. Probably, I guess, like what happened was because it was just a single treatment of antibiotics, I believe. Um, yeah, or no, it was like a pill a day for 10 days or 5 days or something. The standard uh, recognized most efficacious treatment. But maybe what happened was it didn't completely eradicate it, and then it came back. I don't know, or it's something else that's exactly the same. But anyway, so I'm still a little sick, uh, and and my fiance is gone for like 10 days. She's visiting her mom in back in the province. So and then the other thing was I ended up fasting for like 24 hours the other day, which was really cool. Fasting, of course, is when you abstain from the consumption of calories. Technically, this wasn't really a fast because I had some coffee and milk and some like strawberry iced tea. But I fasted from. I didn't consume any solid foods, and I was playing poker the whole time at the Resorts World Casino here, and ended up losing, unfortunately. Not very much, but yeah, it was a really long session of poker, and I fasted, which was great. I felt great about that. I'm like morbidly obese. I weigh you know a lot, like 140 kilos or something, right? 300 pounds. So that was really cool. And then I broke my fast with with like $20 worth of Taco Bell, and finally went to sleep after I'd been up for a long time, and then I slept for a long time because I haven't been sleeping that good with the whole respiratory thing and lying down, not working. But I took some Mucolic or whatever it's called, the mucus thinner, and I slept for a really long time. I think still a little groggy. Anyway, okay, so that's my life update. Feels good to talk about that actually. Sorry for people that are just here for the Austro-libertarian commentary, but you're gonna get that now. So let's see what these people have to say about themselves and why they love the state and why they're wrong for loving the state.
Foreign states own our public services. It's hard to get your head around that. And this is the party of sovereignty. The people who most loudly proclaim their patriotism are always the first to sell us down the river. It's literally a shit show.
Yeah.
There's no other way of describing it. It was bound to happen.
Literally a shit show? Wouldn't that be... Anyway.
So when Mrs. Thatcher said there is no alternative, meaning...
Apparently now there's a separate entry in the dictionary for literally where it means figuratively, because people couldn't figure out how do you properly use literally. So eventually the word people at the dictionary just gave up. They said, fine, literally means whatever you want it to mean. We don't care. Let's get on with our lives.
There's no alternative to neoliberalism. In that case, she was describing what has become the political reality in this country. We can overthrow, against the odds, these powerful and nefarious forces of neoliberalism and restore harmony to them.
George Monbiot, hello. How's it going?
Great, yeah, great to see you.
Great to see you too. Very glad you're here. Welcome back to the Politics Joe basement. And congratulations, publish day as well.
Thank you, yeah, it's a bit scary, but yeah.
But something to celebrate, no less.
Yeah.
The Invisible Doctrine by yourself and Peter Hutchison, out today. And we're going to talk about neoliberalism, we're going to talk about mental health, well-being. But before we get into matters of such importance, for people unfamiliar perhaps with your work or who you are, tell us what you do.
I'm a journalist and activist, professional troublemaker, or so I'm told. I've been in this business for 39 years now, amazingly, and have failed at just about everything. The world's even more shit than it was when I started.
Great work. Yeah, well done. Something to be proud of. Let's start with mental well-being then. Let's get into it. I mean, in terms of by global comparison, I think there's only really one other country that pips us in terms of how poor mental well-being is, and that I believe is Uzbekistan, according to the Global Mind
So
Project.
we beat Uzbekistan. Yeah.
Good stuff.
We knocked them into last place.
Wonderful.
A survey of 71 countries, and we are second to bottom on mental well-being, overall mental health.
And that, people might find that not particularly surprising perhaps, but I would suggest that when you combine a statistic like that with the level of economic development that exists in a country like Britain, you kind of go, well, if we're talking about material gains in terms of GDP, standard, well, maybe actually not standards of living anymore, but certainly from a historical perspective, peace dividend, etc. What on earth is going on? What do you see driving this?
The things we were told would make us happy, but what's happened through the past 45 years is that we've been living under this system which tells us that we are alone, effectively. You're a consumer.
Capitalism's to blame. Capitalism's to blame because all of Britain is crazy. You heard it here, folks. First here, folks.
You're not a citizen anymore. You're a consumer, and you're sitting at home and you're making your economic choices. You don't really have any political power anymore. You don't really have any psychological power anymore. There's no such thing as society, just men and women in their families, as Margaret Thatcher said. And we are being good little citizens, good little consumers, obedient, unthreatening to power, disconnected from each other, and we're falling apart. And the thing is that social solidarity is essential to mental well-being. We stand together or we fall apart.
Yeah, I'm going to have a hard disagreement here. I am all about solitude. And one of the things that I've experienced living in the Philippines is like the total absence of solitude. And that's something that is a lot more common in poorer countries because like people have very low incomes here, so they have to band together and combine their meager incomes in order to have like anything, right? But the beauty of Western civilization is that one person can easily sustain themselves on their own income, and you can have that solitude. You can live in, a studio, and it is such a profoundly powerful experience to just be on your own without interruptions, distractions. You know, now I'm not anti society or anti other people, and interacting with friends and family members can be extremely rewarding as well. Both of these things are important, but I really value solitude. I think it's really great.
mentally. And social solidarity has been smashed in this country. And it's been smashed quite deliberately because from Thatcher onwards, the program was to atomize and rule. When she said there is no such thing as society, that was a manifesto. That's how she wanted it to be, because there is such a thing as society. But
And so this is something that Murray Rothbard says as well, or I'm not sure if he said it exactly. I think he has, but basically, like it's at methodological individualism. Is the way he describes it. Um, like what's the value of thinking in the terms of collectives, right? Really, what exists are individuals, and individuals making decisions, going about like obviously, we can say like abstractions exist. Markets are an abstraction for a large grouping, of people engaged in uh, commercial activity, right? Um, but what's the value in thinking of society, um, and from a policy perspective? I'm sorry, my thoughts are really fragmented on this. I think it's an important topic. So when I say society doesn't exist, what I'm really saying is it's more useful to look at things on an individual level, especially in terms of like policy, government action, who benefits, who doesn't. Um, you can't really look at things on that broad a scale. How do you tell if something benefits society? How would you measure that? Um, but it's a lot clearer when you look at how this benefits or hurts an individual person. That we can have a more useful analysis of.
you can basically destroy it. As she said, the purpose of economics is to change the heart and the soul. And she did that. And tragically, subsequent governments have sustained her program. She saw Tony Blair as her greatest legacy. Tony Blair saw her as perhaps his greatest influence. And it just continues and it grinds down our minds. That separation from each other, that sense that we're not all in it together, that sense that we're now an us and them society, and that the us has to be suppressed perpetually. If we step out of line, if we protest, if we do anything a bit different, we're...
But here I have to beg to disagree. I mean, because contextually, you know what we're talking about. We're talking about the state versus the market. We're talking about a free society versus government control. I mean, he hasn't gotten into this, but you can tell. Well, I mean, just the topic, the failure of neoliberalism. Obviously this guy's like a socialist or a far leftist, and this is all like a precursor to talking about the programs and whatever that he wants. So so on the broader question of like whether the market economy versus state action is people working in solidarity or having solidarity or us being together, the important principle is that in the market economy,
immediately demonized.
in the market economy, uh, you have peaceful social cooperation. The phrase Mises used. You have people working together for their mutual betterment. Nobody's really opposing each other, aside from, well, there's competition, but even competition. I mean, that's not like, you're not really like, it's not like you have two sports teams and you're really going after each other. You're just both doing your own thing, and it's like if you're in a nightclub, you're trying to attract a woman or whatever. Well, other guys are doing that too, but it's not like you're interacting with each other, or trying to sabotage each other, really. Just that happens. There is competition. So in the market economy, people work together, and they work together for their mutual betterment. Whereas with the state, that's not what happens. With the state, so for example, okay, you have an orphanage built, funded by the state. The winners are the orphans. It's great, poor orphans. But somebody has to lose for that to happen. Okay, and the people that lose are the people who pay the taxes. So there's winners or losers. We've stopped being harmonious and working towards our mutual betterment, and started being more vampiric. One party wins at the other's expense, and an orphanage. Okay, that's a pretty decent goal, but what about building tanks, right? So now the winners are the military contractors, and the losers are, again, the poor sap funding the bill. He's going to be the loser in most of these equations, which is, by the way, a large segment of society. So yeah, the point is, it's really the state that is the law of the jungle, that is the powerful predating upon the weak. The market economy, that doesn't happen. It's just people working together harmoniously.
Attacked, perhaps prosecuted. We're frightened, and we're alone. So is it any wonder that we've got a mental health crisis?
Well, you probably have to say no, wouldn't you? And I we will talk more about that.
And yes, there is a mental health crisis on the left. It manifests itself every day.
The sovereign individual and the consequences of that when it comes to questions about well-being. But I would just like to probe further this point about the uniqueness of the UK's position there, because yes, okay, Margaret Thatcher wasn't the president of France, but equally you would think you'd be able to say, well, the economic consensus broadly, there is a degree of alignment between these nations. What is it that's different about the UK?
And it's true that this sort of overarching ideology called neoliberalism has spread around the world. It has affected every country, but the UK was its principal laboratory in the rich world. It's where in the rich world it kicked off in 1979. In poorer nations like Indonesia and Chile, it had already got going through coups, through military force. But this was the first country where...
Chile, by the way, went on to become the richest country per capita in South America as a result of the coup in which Pinochet stopped Allende from establishing a communist dictatorship in Chile. And Pinochet, for all his faults, his regime was not undemocratic. He had a plebiscite, two plebiscites, one in which he was defeated and he had to step down, and one in which his rule was affirmed. As people could still remember the coup, the disaster that Allende had over the economy when he nationalized like half the Chilean economy. I mean, you want to talk about neoliberalism, talk about Hong Kong, talk about Singapore, how these city-states, by adopting the sort of austerity, lean fiscal programs that libertarians advocate for, became absurdly wealthy, despite beginning from circumstances of abject poverty.
It was done through a nominally democratic system. And part of the purpose of neoliberalism is to individuate blame. The individual is to blame for their circumstances, or is to be credited with their circumstances. If you're rich, it's all down to your hard work and enterprise. Never mind that you were born rich. Never mind that you got advantages of class, of colour, of whatever it might be.
A small loan from your father,
Well,
perhaps.
exactly. It's entirely down to you. You know, and so like Donald Trump is like the epitome of this. You know, the self-attribution fallacy. I did all this myself. Yeah, apart from the couple of billion you got from your dad.
But at the same time, I mean, American economic history is replete with Horatio Alger stories of individuals who started with nothing and ended up with billions. So that does happen, and to a degree, our societies are meritocratic. You look at doctors that are making six figures a year. You know, they're putting in the hours. They put in the time to learn medicine. They passed the grueling exams. They worked as interns. They were molded. A lot of businessmen, small businessmen, they worked 80, 90 plus hour weeks, often for less than minimum wage when their businesses were getting started. You know, they sacrificed. So, I mean, yeah, in the market economy, to the degree that you have wealth is to the degree that you are producing stuff that consumers value, and it's true. The only time when you have sort of unjust wealth is when you plunder it from other people, i.e., through the state, through taxation, through special privileges.
But if you're poor, it's also internalized. You're to blame for being poor. It's because you're feckless. It's because you're unenterprising. If your kid is fat, it's because you're a bad parent. Not that we've got this obesogenic industry.
Well, yeah, I mean, don't you choose what you feed your kid? Don't you? Why is nothing to your responsibility? Why is it all society that's wrong? You know, not the fact that you feed your kid KFC every day. Ironically, one of the main groups of people who unjustly receive wealth in the present system is people like these guys, intellectuals that defend the state, and in return for their apologetics for the state, they receive salaries greatly in excess of what they could earn in the market economy because they're not producing anything useful for anyone. Just a lot of bloviating.
These corporations, which are the vectors of obesity, pushing junk food at us, not because the school playing fields have been sold off for development by government. No, it's your fault, and the blame is drilled into us all the time until we come
Companies wouldn't produce stuff if people didn't want to buy it.
to believe it. We internalize it, and you think, yeah, I really am a shit person. I'm a useless person. And that, in combination with what I was discussing before, that atomization of society is devastating to our psyches.
Yeah, I think that Marfish.
Well, no, but what is devastating to your psyche is thinking to yourself, "I'm a shit person." You should never do that. You should never talk down to yourself. You know, focus on the good things you're doing. Yes, identify areas to work on, absolutely, but be constructive. You know, you're not a shit person. You're a good person. You're not a killer. You're not a thief. You're not actively working to make things worse. You know, you've contributed. You're a good person. We all have flaws, and absolutely address them, work on them, improve your life. But don't say this to yourself, "I'm a shit person," because you will internalize that. You will believe it. You know, if you use that sort of abusive language towards yourself, don't abuse yourself.
Fisher writes about that, right? In Capitalist Realism, there's the sort of the ennui, the fatigue that sets in, and how politically corrosive that is. Because if you can destroy people's imagination, if you can destroy the capacity to imagine a better world, a better future, you essentially destroy your political opposition.
Yeah.
In terms of younger people in our society, because certainly here in the UK, if we're looking at sort of the density, frequency, severity actually of mental health issues, we do see a high degree of pronouncement in that younger population. And much of the rhetoric around it is very similar to what you've just described. Basically, your generation is soft. You didn't have to go through rash.
I don't think it's even that. I think it's simply, we didn't look for these things in the past. We didn't. They were there, but we just never noticed them. Everybody was depressed or what. Like um, but this is a great topic. Mental health is very important, and I've personally had severe issues with depression in the past. Um, I've I've self-diagnosed myself with some mental issues. With I mean, I don't know if it's I've never been to like a psychologist or a shrink. Really, I went one time. It was kind of cool, but I've never really had that ongoing relationship. Maybe I should. Um, but I've noticed in myself that I can be sort of on the manic depressive. I can be either manic or depressive. And and this is sort of exacerbated in the past. I used to abuse hard drugs, ketamine, and so that would contribute as well. Also, being a poker player, uh, there's something there too, where you're either winning or losing. It's highs or lows, and that can maybe contribute, add stresses to uh, sort of mental health issues that are lingering in the background. I mean, but certainly, I've had long periods of my life where I've been extremely depressed, and you can literally see it around yourself, and you just don't care, and you feel like there's no good things happening in your life, or you try to hyper fixate on like a video game as a means of escaping it, uh, and I encourage everybody to look after their own mental health, their own well being. You know, uh, Absolutely consult a clinical physician. If you're feeling symptomatic of something, there's a lot of good programs and treatment. A lot of times it's a medical issue. There's drugs that can help you out. And just talking to somebody. I think absolutely this is something that people need to focus more on, um, and it's a testament to where we are as a society that we can allocate more resources to deal with this. That people have the luxury of if you this is like 300 years ago and you're just doing subsistence agriculture all day, yeah, you're probably pretty depressed too. But it's not even something that can be, there's no mechanism for dealing with it. So now, we do have doctors, people that are clinically trained, that understand a little what's going on a biological level, and can help out. And I'm sure this is a science that's going to be evolving as the years to come. So yeah, I guess wanted to say that I think this is a good topic to talk about, and one that needs to sort of come out of the closet and be something that people talk about with each other. And we're sort of moving in this direction, and hopefully we can continue as a society, that doesn't exist to do that.
It is, you take your pick of the excuses. And if we do actually apply that structural critique, if we reject the idea that the individual is responsible, and we go, okay, so what is the system that the young person is now going into? Is it an insecure labour market? Yes, it is. I would go further than saying it's insecure. I would say it's a broken housing market, in terms of the classic.
I mean, you want to talk about unemployment. Reality is it's entirely either it's conceptual or it's caused by the minimum wage. Okay, because basically in a market economy, in an unhampered market economy, a free market, there are no shortages. Okay, so if there's a surplus of goods to be sold, then the price will just go down. And in the labor market, maybe it doesn't parallel like milk quite as well. For one thing, and this is something I'd like to research. Actually, I think this is a subject that really hasn't been explored by anyone in economics that I know of. Maybe there's somebody out there doing work on it. But the labor market is heterogeneous. It's purely heterogeneous. There's no two workers that are the same that do the same work. Even if you have two people ostensibly in the same job at a company, like two burger flippers at McDonald's, okay, they're each going to have so, for example, the productivity of one worker can be determined by okay, so their punctuality. Okay, that's one factor. If you have an employee that's always late or sometimes late, then that's going to cause some stress for the manager. They're thinking, do I need to get somebody to cover the shift? Are they coming in? If you have a worker that's punctual, they can be depended on. So it's one facet, right? Physical ability. If you have a worker that's extremely top shape, maybe they do a lot of sports or whatever, they're going to be more productive. All other things being equal, which they never are, but all other things being equal, than somebody who's in worse physical condition, right? Because they can just do the tasks, they can do more tasks more quickly, whatever. Now, another factor could be somebody who like rushes through things and somebody who takes their time. So there's all these different qualities or attributes to an individual's labor that gets summed up by this price of $9 an hour or whatever. But it's got a million different components. Physical appearance, okay, that's a factor in any customer-facing role. People like attractive people, hygiene. There's a million different things, right? Work ethic encompasses a lot of these. Um, Transportation, availability, and so on and so forth. So there's no two workers that are doing the same work. So it's not really accurate to think of it like as like a surplus of milk. But the thing is that in like a free market economy, I think the labor market would be a lot different than under the extremely regulated economy that we have today. In particular, because the minimum wage prices a lot of people out of the labor market, and thus you have like a huge competition for entry level jobs, because like there should be jobs below them that are even more entry level. Like if the minimum wage is at $15 an hour, and there's so many people competing for the job, well, they're going to choose the guy with years of experience over the guy who has to be trained, right? That's a no-brainer. And if you have hundreds of people competing for every job, then where's the guy with no experience going to get that opportunity unless he has nepotism, or some special advantage? So I mean, this is the problem with the minimum wage. If there was no minimum wage, he could eventually get a job. Maybe it's at $4 an hour, and it's not enough for a 2-bedroom apartment in a nice area of town, but at least he has a job, and he can leverage that opportunity and the experience that he gets there to earn more, right? So I really think eliminating the minimum wage would go a long distance towards solving most of the unemployment problems, because like when unemployment is measured, what they do actually is they just call people up, like, are you looking for work? And if they say yes, then they're unemployed, and that's where you get the unemployment statistic. There's two surveys, at least in America. There's the household survey, and then there's the survey of businesses, right? So this is, by the way, not really that scientific a process, I think, but maybe it's wrong. Maybe there's no better way. Maybe that is the best we can do. But so if somebody is so devastated by the fact that they've gone on all these interviews, or they've applied for all these jobs, nobody ever answers back. They go on the interviews, nobody ever chooses them, because there's always some guy with experience, that is better looking, that whatever, checks all the boxes. They don't. Well, eventually they say, fuck it. I'm not even looking for work because whatever, it's a huge waste of time. Uh, so they wouldn't even be counted as unemployed by the unemployment statistic, which is why it's a bad metric because it doesn't accurately, the people that are priced out of the market by the minimum wage, it doesn't necessarily count them. But it does count if there's some guy that is looking for a job, but he only wants like a specific job. He's out there, he's applying, he's counted as unemployed, even though there's people that would hire him, but he doesn't want to work for them, which is fine. That's their choice, but that person is counted as unemployed, which people interpret as if you have high unemployment, that's there's a big problem, but he's choosing not to work. So the statistic both overcounts and undercounts people in terms of actual unemployment, which the real unemployment problem is when there's somebody who's willing to work but can't find a job that they can do. But again, you get rid of the minimum wage and everybody will be able to find a job eventually. Again, it might be $4 an hour. And obviously you could say, well, people shouldn't work for $4 an hour, or this is a horrific outcome. These people are being exploited. But $4 an hour is better than $0 an hour, and there's a lot of people in this world that are working for less than $4 an hour. And B, I mean, that's not a permanent home for this guy. Maybe 1 month down the road, he says, look, $4 an hour isn't enough. You have this opportunity. You can evaluate my worth. I want $7 an hour. I want $8 an hour. Because 99% of the labor market makes more than that. You've seen. You gave me a chance. Okay, I've shown you how hard I can work. Pay up. Or he can leverage his experience with a new employer. If their wage really is worth $9 an hour or whatever, then in a totally free market economy, you should be able to find an employer that'll pay about that. And there's other interventions in the labor market that make hiring and firing people more difficult. For example, unemployment insurance. The reason why a lot of employers try to manipulate inexperienced workers into quitting instead of being fired is because there are some financial costs to having too many workers be on unemployment.
Things a society typically promises its citizens: improvement of life, better standard of living. We've essentially broken those promises. I don't think it's surprising that we then look at them and go, well, they're depressed and they're anxious.
Well, as a young
you want to talk about
person,
you want to talk about better standard of living. This is again, directly because of leftist policies. Like the reason why real wages don't increase enough is because of inflation. Inflation erodes the value of money. Ergo, you don't save. Why would you save if your money's just going to become worth less, right? Spend it now. Go into debt, even better. So, without savings, you don't have capital accumulation because people save money, it gets invested, and companies use that money to expand, to build and buy new capital, to replace capital that depreciated. And this is the process of how the market evolves and wages increase. Like think about the very dawn of the Industrial Revolution in England, right? The factory system. So you start off with these very rudimentary factories, and they were a godsend at the time because you had all these idle poor people who had the population was growing very rapidly, and the economy, which was very rigid, could not accommodate them. It was like a fixed economy where every town had the um, the guy who made metal on his forge, the innkeeper, the farmers, whatever. But there was just like a fixed economy, not evolving, not dynamic. And the population was increasing, and there's no room for these people, no jobs. And then the factories came around, and they had opportunity and hope, albeit working long conditions for very little pay. So people, the factory owners, and presumably some workers too, would save money, save their income, and reinvest it in the factory system, and build expansions and bigger factories and better machines for producing. And this would make the workers more productive and led to increases in their wages, until we get to the point today where wages are a lot higher than they were back then. Certainly in nominal terms, but also in real terms. Even a minimum wage worker today can live a pretty good life compared to somebody 100 or 150 years ago. We have made progress. Um, so so when you have policies like inflation, uh, central bank inflation, monetary stimulus, which I'm sure these clowns are yammering for all the time, that makes it that discourages savings, and that's what leads to real long-term growth in the economy. So what yes, this is a big problem, and yes, has to be addressed, but you also have to find the right solution. It's not enough to just whine about things. You have to understand why they happen, and you have to suggest a superior alternative. In this case, a gold standard, a full reserve banking, and essentially the system in place in America in the 1870s. Free banking, hard money gold standard, literally coins. Gold, silver, copper, whatever metals you want. Coins, and banknotes that are redeemable at any time for bullion.
Now, you adjust a profit-making unit which can be moved around and exchanged and extracted from. So you extract rent from housing, you extract rent in the form of interest payments for your student loan.
Okay, that's just stupid. Yes, stuff costs money, ergo we're all automatons. Forget it. I mean, the beauty of the modern capitalist system is we have to spend less time now working in order to get these things. Your caloric intake needs for a day can be met by 20 minutes minimum wage work, which where I'm from is $5. That's enough rice and beans and kidney hearts to last you for a week. If you're ultra frugal. Um, and not only that, we have better access today to all the movies, entertainment, books ever written. And you can have a rich scholarly life as a minimum wage pleb. Well, at the same time enjoying the miracles of indoor plumbing and electricity and heat and video games. Uh, I mean, these guys just like to complain, I think, is their problem.
You extract labor in the most fragmented and undermined sense, so that young people have got no labor security at all, and you effectively trade young people as if they were units. And this reaches its apogee in children in care and young people in care, because they are now tradable. A young person in care changes hands amongst private equity and sovereign wealth funds for £100,000. That's what they're now worth, because each of them represents a profit of £910 a week on average to one of these corporations. And these corporations have fixed the system so that it can't be reformed, in effect, because they lobby against any reform of the system. Everyone knows what's wrong with it. Everyone knows that it's in total chaos, that it's bankrupting local authorities. Local authorities, because they can't set up their own provision, are having to make emergency spot purchases of provision from these private equity companies, these venture capitalists, these sovereign wealth funds.
So basically, the UK federal government has a mandate to local councils about how much they have to spend on orphanages or whatever, care for children, foster kids, and then you have firms which supply this foster care service to the councils. Which, by the way, this is not the market economy. This is state action. Okay, this is outsourcing. If you have the government paying a company of 100 people to do something, that's no different than if the government pays 100 people individually to do a thing. Okay, this is still, it's not a market economy. This is government action, but and then often the beneficiaries of government largesse lobby to keep that system in place. Although the blame's still gotta be passed to the representatives who are the ones that actually make the decision. It's not clear, like, what is his solution? Does he want just council orphanages to be
Enormous,
built?
outrageous prices. Their business model is based on building or renting houses in the cheapest parts of the country. And then when a local authority puts out a market demand saying we got a child needs care, say, yeah, we can provide that place, which means the child could be moved hundreds of miles from their home, breaking all their bonds with family, with friends, with teachers, with everything that might give them any sense of trust and belonging. So they're uprooted purely in order to serve this corporate machine. It's not in the benefits of the child, it's not in the benefits of public finances, it's just in the benefits of profit making. And these companies are making...
But he's acting like it's the corporations that decide which company gets the stipend. Like, that's the council that makes that decision. And anyway, this is all just the government doing stuff.
Yeah, that on average, that's their average profit. It's a stupendous level of profit from these tradable assets called children in care. So yeah, that's the extreme end of it. But there's a whole spectrum of young people being exploited in ways which sort of end up with that logical extreme.
So tell me more about that kind of the most striking part of that to me was the relocation, right? Hundreds of miles, you end up disconnected, disassociated almost. And particularly in a broader societal context in which the proliferation of digital technology means that our day-to-day interaction, whether it's just conversation face-to-face, spending time with each other, particularly, again, I'm speaking from a younger perspective here, but we've outsourced a great deal of that to these ginormous digital corporations. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the consequences of that for social fracturing, social atomization.
So when social media came along, I thought this was the best thing that's ever happened to us. Because I thought, A, we can break the stranglehold of the mainstream media, which was essential because most of our mainstream media is owned by offshore billionaires whose interests are the polar opposite of ours, but they spend their whole time trying to persuade us that what's good for them is good for us. But also, it's going to bring us together into bigger and more powerful citizens' movements than we've ever seen before. You know, you look back at history and you look at the levelers' revolts or the diggers' revolts in the 1640s. And you think, if only they had social media, they could have all risen up at the same time instead of being picked off one by one.
Distributed.
I mean, the levelers and the diggers, these are two very separate groups. The diggers were a bunch of crazed communists. They were founded by Gerard Winstanley in He was born in 1609. And this is, by the way, when I talk about socialism has failed every time it's been tried. I'm not just talking about the Soviet Union and Cambodia and China, but there's been experiments even before Marx was around. So one of them was the Diggers in England. One of the colonies, the Plymouth Rock colony, is another experiment in failed communism. So what the Diggers wanted was basically the communist goal, which is instead of private ownership of stuff, you just have communal ownership, a common store of goods, and he did set up a commune of like 30 people, but it never really took. And then you had the Ranters, which was basically communism with orgies. And then you had the Levelers, on the other hand, which were proto-libertarians in favor of private ownership of property, religious freedom, limited government, individual rights.
Yeah.
That's right, exactly. And that was what I thought social media was going to deliver. But of course, as usual, I was naive about these things. And it's taken over or created by billionaires who, again, have got the opposite interests to ours. And it's just another form of predatory exploitation. And of course, it fits very well with the neoliberal
Everything is exploitation to these guys.
ideas of constant competition and comparison. He's got more likes than me, more friends than me. You're just always comparing yourself, A, to other people, but B, to a sort of transcendental form of yourself that you can never aspire to. So, you've got all this sort of digital manipulation which can make you look so much more beautiful than you really are. And that's the image that you present. But of course, you can never live up to your own image. So you end up consuming yourself, competing with yourself. And on top of everything else, I mean, I don't think it's a root cause, but I think it exacerbates all these other tendencies that we're talking about. It just breaks your mind down.
I think, because when I talk about this, I think on the one hand, right, it could, and I think still has the possibility to be actually quite a democratizing force, right? Whether it's, I don't think the Arab Spring is necessarily the best example of these powerful.
Absolutely, social media has been and it continues to be a force that gives rise to the power of the individual to speak out, as I am doing at the moment, expressing my political views, and I'm engaged in discussions every day on Reddit with people, debate, and I think social media is great. Sure, there's a lot of doom scrolling and noise. Nothing's perfect, and some of that can be entertaining too. I mean, it is what it is. I think it's a lot better than traditional media. I'd much rather plug into Facebook or Reddit than watch cable or something, or listen to the radio. I think part of the issue for these guys is, they live in their own little Marxist bubble, and they're not so happy to hear that the rest of the world does not agree that we need egalitarian communism imposed by force on the masses. Anyway, we're somehow at the 1 hour mark again, so that's all for me. Thanks again for tuning in. Please subscribe to this video, this channel. I need more subscribers. And consider checking out some of my other content. If you enjoyed this video, if there's any problems, let me know. Give me feedback on audio or other things I can do to improve. I'm an amateur. This is an ongoing experience. I'm developing. I'm learning. So your feedback is crucial. And, most importantly, you have a great day. Go out there, be great, do great things, and enjoy yourself. Be happy, and seize the day, my friends, because time is a precious commodity which we must invest to maximize our utility.